Welcome to the Compliance Education Academy. My name is Colin Tansley and I'm an experienced investigator and a trainer. The purpose of these videos is to provide you with bite-sized chunks of learning that will allow you to progress at your own speed and at times that are convenient to you. This presentation is titled Due Diligence Explained and an introduction to what it is and why it is necessary. So what is due diligence? It's essential information that comprises facts about a customer or even a business that would enable an organisation to assess the risks to which they may be exposed should they choose to go into a business relationship with that particular entity. Now, what's really important for AML obligated entities is making sure the risks are factored in that include money laundering and terrorist financing, but there are other things to be included as well. So due diligence is good governance in any business. So understanding who you're about to work with, avoiding problems that could be financial or reputational. And it's also the cornerstone of an effective anti-money laundering, countering terrorist financing program for obligated entities. What do I mean by legally obligated entities? So these are organisations or businesses such as banks, law firms, property agents, art dealers, anybody that's got responsibilities around anti-money laundering. They must conduct due diligence on the clients and businesses they are acting for. Now, other companies often conduct third-party due diligence to evaluate any risks with suppliers, for example, vendors, contractors, partners, and again, that's really good governance, it's good business practice and should be undertaken. Mostly that would to ensure that the company they are about to work with or the supplier is not subject to bankruptcy, for example, or there's been issues with other businesses in the past who have worked with them, those sorts of things. But also individual investors. They may conduct due diligence, and they may do that voluntarily to make a better decision about potential investments. So due diligence covers a breadth of organisations and businesses, and as I say, very good practice and shouldn't be avoided. So there are levels to due diligence. KYC, the most basic level, is called Know Your Customer. Now, if you've opened a bank account yourself or you are going to sell a property, most often you'll be asked to surrender a copy of your passport and a utility bill and maybe some other information. You might be asked to complete a form, for example. But that's the most basic level of due diligence. And it's more of an identity check, really. The next level is customer due diligence, and that's a little bit more involved. It might be that particular business wants to understand a bit more about your funds, what money you have in the bank, or where that particular stream of funds is coming from. There's source of funds and source of wealth. They need to understand perhaps where this section of money is coming from, as compared to how perhaps you became wealthy, for example. So often the examples that are given, somebody became wealthy, for example, because they inherited their parents' properties, businesses, etc. It may also involve exploring corporate connections, companies, beneficial ownership, all those sorts of things. So that's customer due diligence, and that's the next level up from Know Your Customer. And then you have what's known as enhanced due diligence. Now this is where you go much deeper and you'll be looking at understanding the person, their connections, their family, properties owned, for example. Often it can depend on what the particular business actually wants to know, so every sector is slightly different. But it's a very deep dive into somebody, something. Why is it necessary? Well, here's just some of the reasons why we do it. It prevents financial crime. No legitimate business wants to be working with a criminal or a money launderer or a terrorist. So understanding and conducting a thorough review of information and understanding where the money is sourcing from, whether there's any adverse media, so they can understand the risks or not. It protects businesses and organisations from those sorts of associations. And if you don't conduct any form of due diligence, you are leaving yourself wide open to regulatory action or reputational damage. It does protect a business reputation. It's a professional thing to be doing. But it's important there are records kept of those particular investigations as well. If you're an AML obligated entity, you have to do it by law. So you're showing that you're adhering to legislation. And it's a responsible thing to be doing. And say, legitimate businesses don't want to be doing business with money launderers, terrorists, criminals, or people that are going to cause them problems because they don't pay their bills, for example. So some of the things that need to be covered in a typical due diligence style investigation: adverse media identification. So that would normally involve searching across the internet to try and identify if there's any issues in the past, ongoing, historically, to try and get a picture on what happened, in what context, etc. Sanctions, very important issue. If your people and businesses can be subject of sanctions, the most obvious one right now in 2025 is the war in Ukraine. There's many Russian businesses and people that are sanctioned. If you go into business with them without checking whether they appear on a sanctions register, you are running the risk of fines, loss of your license, and adverse media for yourself. PEP is a politically exposed person. So, as the name would suggest, a politician. It could also be a high-ranking officer in any of the armed forces. And it's not to say you wouldn't necessarily do business with them, but there will be a risk management plan that would have to be put into place. So you need to understand if that person is exposed in any way, because they can be, not necessarily would be, but they are targets for bribery and corruption. So you need to understand, again, has there been any references anywhere about this happening in the past? What level are they? Where do they sit in the organisation? Is it historic, or is it the here and now? Jurisdictional risks. There are countries that are more risky than others to do business with. If an individual is operating their business in a particular country, you need to understand if that area is more prone to corruption, bribery, money laundering, terrorism. There's a whole host of risks you need to assess and understand. And there are resources that you can use for this, and this will be shown in later videos. And then if they're involved in certain commodities, crypto is recognised as a high risk commodity. If a person's involved in cryptocurrency, for example, then you would need to take account of the risks involved in that. But there are other commodities as well. For example, art is recognised in certain quarters as a commodity that could be abused for money laundering. That's just one example. I'm not saying it would be, but it could be. If you've any questions or comments about this video, do send me an email. I'll do my best to respond as quick as I can and progress as and when you're ready on to the next video.